So we've already said that trail riding is pretty dang fun. So we thought we'd check out desert riding, and not so much single track and lower speed, but higher speed desert riding. We got a really cool trip just a couple days ago. We're going to give you an inside look right now.
Country song. And I was how long gone from what's
Ready? Ready. Going right. Hopefully the rain stops. Here we go. We're heading out to something I don't do very often, done just a little bit of, and that's desert riding. That might seem crazy living in California, but we don't get good opportunities for good riding in the desert where you're on good single track. And we're heading through this little town, Nipton, California here. And it's been raining. We've been in quarantine lockdown, so we're still out staying away from people. And we brought some food. Just stop and get gas. And so with these trails are going on have a lot of single track, not whooped out. Check this out. This is a cool town. These new Ogio packs we've been running on the tight trails for the last couple months, and this is our first trip where we've had them on high speed stuff. And these types of packs that cross in the front take the weight off, and you don't have it around your waist, and I call it the Manzier, and it crosses in the front, and it feels really good. We really like these things on the trail. Okay, so the first thing we learned is we got hooked up with a really good group of guys. We had 7 of us total on the ride, which is a good size. And I was actually kind of the, I don't want to say slowest guy, but I was definitely one of the most conservative guys. One of the things I've learned in being over 50, and even though some of the guys are older than me, or quite a few of them were, in the desert, this wide open stuff, I just really kept her back down a lot. Now I'm used to speed, I say speed kills, but speed gets you hurt. That's one thing I learned with this desert riding is high speed stuff, you want to be careful because anything can happen. And these guys, these desert guys, they run at a good pace. Robert and his guys, and then a couple of the buddies I was with, they all run at a pretty good pace in this off-road stuff.
And that's something you want to really watch for and be careful. But we had a good time, and there's one of the differences with riding desert riding compared to a lot of other desert riding. A lot of guys go to the desert and they park at a spot and then just go right around camp, and everything's whooped out and rough, and there's just a lot of roads. Going with a guide like we did, we're able to find a new track and a lot of really good single track that wasn't that rough. Now, anything in the desert is rough no matter how you slice it. It's still pretty rough stuff, but really fun single track stuff that you can see in a lot of this footage that we have for you. Is you can see that we have that. This ride started off a little drizzly for the first hour and a half or so, and we ended up doing like over I think it was like almost 7 hours total, because we did stop for lunch and just went. We did 108 miles, which our plan was to be a bit less than that, but we did a lot of miles. Got to see some really neat terrain, and even in the desert, there's just a wide range of terrain, and it's really beautiful. And this time of year, flowers out, blooming. Late in the afternoon there, all the flowers were blooming. These 4 o'clock ones that come out later, they're just awesome. So we only had some drizzle for the first part of the ride, and then after that it was just epic, and hardly any dust, if anything, really. As you can see, it's just amazing conditions. So one thing I'm learning about the desert stuff is, first of all, most of the guys are all really cool. And this type of situation with some guides, you get to just be on some of the most epic trails, because these guys do a good job of going and finding trails and making sure that they give you just a great experience. And I think that some of this type of riding is just some of the best kind of riding you can do if you don't feel comfortable in tight mountain stuff and tight technical stuff. This can be really where a lot of people feel at home, because they're not as intimidated by steep climbs falling off to a side and really rocky, nasty conditions, let's say, and so forth. And a lot of the tighter, more technical rides that we get into, this is where a lot of the desert riding can appeal to a broader audience. And so we really enjoy it. I don't know if it's something we'll do more than these big type of rides. This is a legit first real desert ride we've done, where we're with legit dudes who are running mooses. These guys are all seriously into desert, and for them to do 100 miles in a day is no big deal. They're used to that. I think it's probably something we'll probably only do like once a year or so, and then plan on still doing a lot of our other rides in moto that we do. But it was a great time and pretty dang fun. All day, it was so different type of muscles and everything it uses. The back of my arms were sore from like the bike yanking me and just going so much further and faster and longer than I'm used to going. So that was one thing that was really interesting. The Honda 250 RX was one of the main bikes we kind of wanted to get a feel for in this trip, and our EXCs that we took was kind of set up for more just full-on dual sport dirt roads and roads. It was really kind of too soft for these conditions, where the Honda 2020 Honda CRF 250 RX is really a motocross bike. They don't have a lot of features that a lot of some of the other bikes do, with a 6-gear and wide ratio transmission, but it does have an 18-inch rear wheel, a big tank, and kickstand. This thing is at home on this big stuff. I was so surprised. And there's only a few times that I really wish it had that 6-gear on some big sections where we were just tapped out. And the gearing felt pretty dang good the way it was, and it did everything that a lot of the other big bikes with us were doing, the 450s, no problem. It was so comfortable riding this Honda 250. Really enjoyed it. Feel at home on these Hondas. It just feels amazing. And so the bike just performed really well. And one of the main reasons was the suspension. When you are on comfortable, and this is stock suspension, when you're on comfortable suspension, you can just feel at home. And I feel that's the bike I want to ride the most, is the one that the suspension feels just incredible. So that's why I kind of chose that Honda CRF 250 RX after riding both bikes. That's the one I wanted to stay on the rest of the day, and it was just an amazing bike to ride. Really fun. I think with the Yamaha FX, which has a 6-gear, and that's something I'd like to compare to it. KTM also has an XCF. So those are the only companies that are making these kind of off-road bikes right now based on their motocross bikes. We had a long ride, long day. Our tour guys were able to stash fuel so we could actually grab fuel on our ride, some of the things I felt like this ride, you're able to see such a, when you do 108 miles, and none of it was the same trail. We do a full loop everywhere. You get to see just a wide range of terrain and creatures. We saw huge rattlesnake, and that was a bit scary. I hate snakes, so huge rattlesnake. These big longhorn, like, I don't know what they were, like mountain goats things, rams or whatever, out in the middle of the desert, out there, and then tons of rabbits and all kinds of other critters. And again, the desert was just so beautiful. You wouldn't have guessed you could see so much wide range of terrain. And again, it's just something that I think that a lot of people who do it, they get it and understand how fun it is. And I think if you're from an area, maybe in the East Coast and areas that don't have deserts, it's a really neat experience. And that's why like these tours do so well, because guys they're excited to get to something that's just wide open. They're not trapped in by trees and bushes and farmland and so forth. They can just have a huge variety of, and it's a massive, as you can see, you can kind of right here ride, in most of this desert situations, you can ride as many miles as you want in any direction until you hit a road or something. You have endless possibilities, and that's what's really fun about desert riding. So at this point, I'm going to switch over at the very end of the ride. We talk with Robert from 220 Off-Road Tours and get a little bit of input from him on his thoughts on the tours he does and desert riding as a whole. Okay, Jay here. We're out with Robert with 220 Tours, second to none. So he kind of came up with a cool little catchy name. So he runs 220 on his bike. So a big surprise there. We're out in the lower part of Nevada where it meets California and Arizona. Cal Navarre. It's taken me a little while to say that, but it's better than Uncompahgre. I've gotten way better at that, by the way. So I can say that way better. So he does these tours out here in the desert. And this is my first, I said this as we were coming here, this is my first real desert ride. I've ridden in the desert, but mostly slow going stuff and never with desert guys, just with slow guys. And we've gone like to Moab and different places, but it's all slow, technical, not high speed. We did 108 miles today, which is about 50 miles more than we typically do on one of our rides, because we're all slow going and we're about 5 to 7 hours on our 50 to 60 mile rides. And it's slow and we're helping people. But anyway, I wanted to just real quickly get, you can see the phone number here. So just tell us a little bit about what you do on your tours and how many people you have and that kind of stuff, and where a lot of people come from that come ride.
Yeah, so we do tours, 1 or 2 day tours, and we can go from Las Vegas area, or if it's a 1 day tour, we typically start out here. And they start about 40 miles up to about 108 miles, 110 miles. We limit it to 10 people, 10 riders, and then when we have 10 riders, we have 3 guides. So 1 in the middle, 1 a sweeper, and then a lead. And then we usually bring the chase van that follows us, and it meets up with us about every 40 miles. Supplies gas, snacks, water, things like that. If anybody gets tired, they can load up on the trailer, skip a section, things like that. So, and basically people are coming from, we get a lot of Southern California, but we also get a lot of Canadian, Montana, Idaho. They come during the winter when it's 8 feet of snow out there. They'll trailer their bikes out here or rent some from us, and we'll take them out and show them how to conquer the Mojave.
That's rad. And if this thing was running today and you could have skipped 20 or 40 miles, I probably would have done that. I would have hopped on the bus, but we didn't have that running today, so it wasn't an option. I had to dig deep and pin it. After our big lunch that we weren't supposed to have, John scheduled a lunch that was out of the plan, and everybody was feeling it after that lunch, but it kind of helped us get through. We had some rain out here, so it made these conditions epic. But what time of year do you typically do these rides?
We usually start like Labor Day weekend, so they'll run through September, and then they'll go right to, usually the Supercross finals are here in Vegas, so we usually do the day after the Supercross finals on May 4th, 5th, somewhere right in that range. But usually we'll stop like right around the first week of May for tours, and then my guys and I will start scouting out new trails and making new stuff for the next season.
And that's what's interesting is that a lot of people think that you just in the desert you just go, but there's like lions, tigers, and bears everywhere. Like you can get jacked up if you just pin it and go like straight, because there's like gnarly things and rocks and cactus, dude. I got one little one in my bum today. I never went down today. Knock on wood here. I was stoked. I never went down, but somehow I was doing a knack off the back of the bike, and I got back on. I felt one, and I actually reached back while I was moving and pulled out one about this long out of my rear. But our buddy John, he found a few cactus, had to stop a couple times and dig them out. One of the coolest things, I know you don't have your pack on, he had his pack, and when we took off on the ride, he had these, like, I thought they were just like scissors, like medical scissors. They were sitting in his pack, but they're tweezers, and you have those right there so you can pull people's cactus up.
Absolutely, because it's going to happen, and the cooler the trails get, the more there's cactus around, so it's real easy to get off the trail an inch, and you're going into a cactus. Sometimes you don't even need to go down, like you were saying, because the clumps will sit on the ground, and your tires will pick them up. They'll land on you somewhere, or you feel it, and you automatically go to reach for it, and the next thing you know, it's in your hand and everywhere else. So,
well, and the desert was just so beautiful. Lots of people don't realize how pretty the desert is. Like this time of year, it's like, hey, is it those yellows and greens? That's not very typical. That
lasts about maybe 3 or 4 weeks out of the year. Yeah, it's literally like springtime. We've had quite a bit of rain over the last 3 or 4 weeks, so had a little rain and some sunshine, and the flowers bloom. But with that, we start getting tortoises and things like that. So you got to kind of watch out for the trails, and that's my job, being out front and watching out, make sure we're not running over anything.
Well, and cutting new trail in every year, like you're saying, is cool because you get sick of doing it. We didn't have to do that much. We did some rough trail, don't get me wrong. Plenty of it was rough, but not a ton of totally whooped out, just terrible stuff. There was only little bits of that connected, and the rest of it was all like either fresh or a year or few old. It wasn't too bad, but that's what you have to do to have a cool experience for people coming out. And I could see, like you said, those Canadians and people that are stuck in the winter.
Yep.
This is such a different thing for them. And then they got the Vegas and Laughlin experience so close. So, well, most people just do one day ride. Do you kill them in one day?
We try not to kill them in one day, but we do get, if, the guys that come down from like Montana and, places like that, we try to do a 2-day tour. And that usually, it's all inclusive. So we cover their gas, meals, hotel stay, and stuff like that. It's all inclusive of the tour. Some guys will come out here and they'll actually stay at Kalnavari out here. And so we don't have to worry about the lodging and stuff. And we'll do 2 single-day rides rather than one giant loop. Because when we do the 2-day rides, we typically start in Vegas, and we do about 550 to 560 miles in a 2-day period.
Oh, which is about 500 more than I'd probably want to do in a 2-day period. So, but it was an incredible time. I saw this huge rattlesnake today, which was quite an experience because I hate snakes and rattlesnakes especially. But luckily I was on a dirt bike, so he wasn't too worried. I wasn't too worried, I guess, about seeing him. But really good time. I mean, amazing time out here riding this. I think a lot of people are going to enjoy this that are looking for that desert experience without having to go to Baja, because a lot of people get intimidated by having to go to Baja. They're right in the United States of America here.
Absolutely.
We have some pretty good desert.
Yeah, and the nice thing about it is we went on, like you were saying, some pretty good stuff today, some pretty gnarly stuff. But there's a variety of trails, and we can have escape routes from power line roads to quad trails, things like that, or we can get super technical like we did today and start doing some hill climbs and a lot of whoops and things like that. So we got a lot of variety, and if we tend to get a mixture of guys on a tour, that's why we have extra guides, so we can split off and essentially run 2 tours.
So do you hate it when you get really slow guys? Like, what do you do when that happens?
When I get really slow guys, because I have a couple groups that will come out, their guys are just learning to ride, and we'll start off on a power line, get to where they're comfortable, and we start integrating them in. It's actually very rewarding when they're done with the day and they've accomplished something.
Because I was at the back of the group, I was like the back guy all day. Seven bikes, I was last. But it was kind of fun because I could see all the freight train in front of me. It was cool. They were all stacking up, and I could see them. It was really neat. But you guys didn't have to wait too much for me, but do you get guys? One of the funniest things we hear, we take guys riding, and one of the funniest things they say is, "Hey, can I hang out somewhere and then meet back up with you? Like, can I? Is there a place I can hang out and watch?" Did you ever get that?
We've got that, and typically, like I said, we have the chase vehicle. So we usually encourage them to. Somebody will take them on an escape route back to the vehicle, where they can rest while we're still doing some riding, or they'll hop in the van. So that's kind of that.
Since you're getting paid, he's way nicer than when I am to guys. So because I get guys, the other day we took a guy and he's like, "Oh, can I leave my jacket somewhere and we just get it on the way back?" I'm like, "We're not coming back this way." Like, and I'm sure you're the same way. You don't want to come back the same way you went.
No, absolutely. We try to make loops out of it. Like I said, every once in a while we'll have to use an escape route and get somebody back to the van or something like that. But usually everybody's understandable. And when you sign up on our website, we go through a whole series of questions, and there's a reason for that. We try to not put an expert guy with a beginner guy or something like that. So if that does happen, I'll encourage them to sign up for maybe the next weekend or come out and do a private tour.
Well, awesome. Anyway, thanks again, Robert. It was an awesome time. 220 off-road tours, just a great time. I think, Spencer, did you have a good time?
Oh, yeah.
So we're worn out. Now we got like a 3.5 hour drive back home. So we'll check you out next time.